We might be getting a little bit healthier at the running back position, but there's still a lot of big decisions to make in our top 30 this week. And I'm going through the top 30 running back rankings for week 11 fantasy football. And I'm doing everything I can to get us ready for week 11. Make sure to go down there, drop a like on the video, subscribe to the channel to show your support. Now, getting into our first tier, I've got it exclusively for these two guys, Christian McCaffrey, Bijan Robinson. They both belong in here this particular week. Christian McCaffrey coming off a little bit of another lighter game, but I would not be phased when I'm going against the Arizona Cardinals. And I do think of when you look at this matchup, and this one compared to last week's, the Los Angeles Rams, that was a really bad matchup from the get-go for them. Now, this one is just different. Arizona's defense, yes, I think does look pretty good, but I do think this is one of those games that McCaffrey could take advantage of on the ground. His receiving upside is what keeps him inside tier 1. And Bijan Robinson versus Carolina. The matchup couldn't be better. This team, just like the Panthers, is so... I don't know what to do with them. But I will say this, I'm kind of thinking we're getting out of the slump that Bijan has had in fantasy in this game right here. I'm going to call it right now. I think Bijan gets out of this slump and turns in a really good one in fantasy this week. Dropping down to our next tier, I've got Jahmyr Gibbs at 3 and Josh Jacobs at 4. So with Jahmyr Gibbs, he couldn't make it inside of tier 1 because of matchup this week. I think when you look at this Philly game and what they did last week, that is a really dominant team, and particularly on the front seven. That's a very dominant group right there that just somehow continues to get better when they make more trades and they make more acquisitions. They just continue to get better. So Jahmyr Gibbs, I know it's been a little bit of a rocky road this year. I do think it's going to start to stabilize though, and that's the reason he's at the top of tier 2, because I do think that with Dan Campbell calling the plays now, it starts to stabilize in Gibbs' favor. Josh Jacobs at 4 at the New York Giants. The matchup can't get much better. I will say this though, this is the first time in a long time that I remember feeling like the Packers offense is broken. I really do feel like that right now, and I don't think I'm the only one. The Packers offense just seems like there's something really deeply wrong, and I don't know if it's Love, I don't know if it's LaFleur, I'm not sure, but I do know this. I do want them on their best days, and against the Giants defense, it does feel like a matchup that he should dominate, so I'm going to rank him according to that. Devon Achan's at 5, and James Cook is at 6. So Devon Achan, he goes overseas to play the Washington Commanders on Sunday morning, and listen, I've kind of discussed it throughout the week. I do think this is one of those games where we have to worry about the upside of the Dolphins offense in fantasy. Now, Achan has really excluded himself from Jalen Waddle because Jalen Waddle is dependent on matchup. Achan is not because of the receiving upside. So this may be a floor game where he only hits like 14 to 16 fantasy points in a full PPR format because of that receiving upside, or the Washington defense is still bad and they could run all over them. Either one is possible. I'm going to have him ranked at 5 just because we know the upside is terrific. James Cook's at 6. I think versus Tampa this week, it could go a couple different ways. So number one, if you're looking at weather forecasts right now, looks like it could be a little bit of a nasty game in Buffalo this week. Always at this time of year, it gets really nasty in Buffalo, which does usually lean James Cook heavy. But the other way to look at it is that this offense continues to just not know what they're doing. I mean, every game they've given James Cook 100 yards, he wins. Like, I don't understand why they don't consistently do this, but they don't. And it doesn't make sense to me, and it probably will never make sense to me. So I do have that in the back of my mind, why I can't rank him higher, because they go away from him too much. But I do think in this kind of game script, it could be a really good one. And then Rico Dowdle at number 7. We don't know for sure if he's going to play. He did miss practice on Wednesday. And listen, I just think that when you watched him play last week, he was actually mostly bad. He definitely looked like he was affected by the injury. So I am kind of wondering, do they let him sit a week? Something like that? I don't know. I kind of doubt that he's willing to do that. I think he's probably really reluctant to give up his spot. But I will say, if he plays this game, again, I see the upside in the matchup against Atlanta. But I also see a world where he does pretty much the same as last week, which is gets an end zone carry, whoop-de-doo, but is probably really inefficient in this game. That's why he dropped my rankings. And I'm kind of curious to know what the rest of the community thinks of this one, because I do think of Rico Dowdle as a dominant back still, but he's clearly hampered by injury to me. Dropping down to our next tier, Javonte Williams is at 8, and Ashton Genty is at number 9. They're both playing each other at Las Vegas this week on Monday night. Javonte Williams, this matchup couldn't be better. They're coming off the bye week. They're actually extra motivated, I would say. They have a little bit of an emotional game in this one with Marshawn Nealon's death. Rest in peace. But I do think the Cowboys will turn in a really good performance. And Javonte Williams is the last man standing. I mean, not only is he clearly the best, he's the last man standing in the backfield. So I do think Javonte has a really good day. And Genty as well. I know Genty has been kind of a disappointment from the perspective of where you drafted him, but I do still think he has the ability to give you big games, and I think this could be the one. I mean, it's against Dallas at home. He has done well the past several weeks, getting in the end zone, and we know he's going to handle about 20 opportunities on a per game basis, if not more. I do feel like this could be one of those games where he hits his ceiling in this one. And then Kyren Williams at number 10 versus Seattle. I would actually say him and Genty have been kind of viewed similarly this year. They're both viewed as more underwhelming guys, but a lot of people still probably value them as high-end RB2s, but they are not quite sure what to do with them and how to value them in trades. Kyren this week, I don't really like the matchup at all. Versus Seattle, that matchup doesn't get much worse, but I do think that the Rams offense has been running too good to really overlook him too much. So this is, to me, the perfect one to line up on our site, fsroundup.com, in a start-sit poll. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go to our site right here, type in Ashton Genty, go to chat, then go to start a poll for week 11, and I'm going to add Kyren Williams to stack him up with, and I want you to go vote on this one. It's completely free to vote. It's completely free to start your own poll. That's what you need to do right now because I want to get live feedback and results from the rest of the community, and that's exactly what you can do by starting your own start-sit poll. And if you want access to my weekly top 250 rankings, which is actually 270 this week, the automatic waiver tool, the comparison feature, the league sync-up feature, that is all behind the premium subscription, and now is the time to do it because this is how you win some leagues right here. And also, I'm giving team breakdowns as well right now to go through trade ideas to make your team better, waiver acquisitions, anything to make your team more ready for the playoffs. We're doing those team breakdowns as well. Now, dropping down to our next tier, I've got Saquon Barkley at 11 and Derrick Henry at 12. Now, I deliberately left these two guys out of the tier above them because they don't deserve to be there. I mean, Saquon Barkley versus Detroit, the matchup I don't have a particular problem with, but I will say this, Saquon Barkley just hasn't been good. I mean, that to me is a more disappointing pick than Ashton Genty. He's hit, one ceiling game this year? It just hasn't been good enough. And I'm kind of convinced, and I didn't say this on the wide receiver rankings, I'm kind of convinced that the problem is A.J. Brown. He's sucking the energy out of the team. Maybe I'm off base, but that's the way I'm reading it right now because the game that he comes back, Saquon gets over 20-plus touches, and he still does nothing with them. Saquon Barkley, to me, just not a very high upside guy right now, even though we know in the back of our heads, it wouldn't shock me if he has a really good game. And then Derrick Henry at 12. Also wouldn't shock me if he has a good game either, but he's not earning him right now. And this matchup, I really don't like. If you look back to the beginning of this year, week 2, Derrick Henry played the Browns and was atrocious, and they crushed them. And what's the one thing that I've been saying with the Ravens and why I liked Henry as a buy low candidate this year? Well, what I was saying was that I think the reason I like him so much is because when the Ravens start rattling off wins and start really building leads against opponents, that's where we see the best of Henry. That didn't happen the first time against Cleveland because the run game is that strong. So I do think that Henry is in rougher position in this particular matchup. And I think that Judkins is in really tough position as well. And Travion Henderson's at 14. So with Quinshaw Judkins versus Baltimore in that same matchup, the problem is not that I don't think he can do it. I've been saying this a long time. Quinshawn Judkins, his issue is any team, any defense that sees Dylan Gabriel play, all they have to realize is, oh, we just stacked a box against Judkins, and then they have to, we make Dylan Gabriel beat us with his arm, and he can't do that. So even the Jets figured that out last week. I worry about the rest of the schedule moving forward for Quinshawn Judkins, and this was already a one I did not like because the Ravens will crush him in this game. I've got to have him inside the top 15 because he has electricity in him, but I do not want to play him, particularly over a lot of other guys that we went through. Travion Henderson at 14. 14 versus the New York Jets on Thursday Night Football. This one could go a lot of different ways, and I'm sure you know. Ramondre Stevenson is out, so he's officially been ruled out, which means Terrell Jennings will get some work, but if it looked like last week, it should be Trayvon's game. And Trayvon finally broke through, and I'm very happy about it. I'm very happy to see Trayvon break through. I've got him in several leagues this year. I wanted this to happen, but I will say this, I'm still not convinced that it's going to sustain itself. Now, with Ramondre out, I think it's a pretty safer play this week, but there is still that doubt in my head that's like, what if Terrell Jennings is their guy this week? They shouldn't be very competitive very long with the Jets, so it could be one of those games where Trayvon has a limited amount of touches, and if he doesn't hit early, it won't happen because they'll be crushing the Jets, and then they'll utilize Terrell Jennings. Maybe I'm overthinking it. Let me know in the comments, but that's the way I see it this week. Chase Brown at 15 to round out this tier. He belongs in this tier to me. At Pittsburgh this week, off the bye week, Joe Flacco getting another week healthier, and the matchup is too good. And listen, we all know that Cincinnati's upside from a rushing perspective is almost non-existent against a lot of opponents. Where Chase Brown gets his upside is through the air. And we know we will see plenty of that in this game against Pittsburgh. I do anticipate a high-scoring game in this one in Pittsburgh, and I do think that Chase Brown will be plenty involved. Dropping down to our next tier, Jaylen Warren is at 16, and Breece Hall is at 17. So with Warren, the same matchup as Chase Brown. It's in Pittsburgh, and like I said, I'm kind of anticipating a higher scoring matchup in this game. And Jaylen Warren's floor has been pretty safe. Now, he's been bumped up a couple spots because there's a couple missing guys on bye week this week, particularly Jonathan Taylor, to rise him up the rankings a little bit. But Jaylen Warren is in this position to where he hasn't busted yet this year, but he's also just doesn't have a super high ceiling or anything like that. But I would rather take that over Breece, still, to be honest with you. And I get it. People will come at me saying, Breece is the only guy. Garrett Wilson just re-injured his knee. He's out. And I don't disagree. All I'm saying is that at New England, this is going to get out of hand pretty early. I mean, really, really early on Thursday night. So I just don't see much path for a guy like Breece, who the defense knows we shut this guy down, it's over. So I think that they will absolutely key in on him. And Breece Hall is just in this position to where if he doesn't break off a big play, his upside is going to be capped. Kamani Vidal is at 18, and DeAndre Swift is at 19. Now, Kamani Vidal at Jacksonville, I was right on him last week, and I'm a little ambivalent about this one this week because I could see another one of those types of games against Jacksonville that he just had against Pittsburgh. I do think there's a chance that they end up crushing the Jags, and it's embarrassing, and Kamani Vidal has another good game. But I also could see the world where Kamani Vidal is less efficient with the Jags front seven than he was against the Steelers front seven, and they lean on Jarrett Patterson a little bit more, or just lean on the passing game a little bit more. Either one of those is possible. I do see ups and downs with Kamani Vidal so far, and that's kind of the reason why I'm not feeling ultimately as confident in him this week as I was last week. And DeAndre Swift, we don't know if he's playing. He did not practice on Wednesday because of a hip injury, so we have no idea if he's going to end up playing. But I do think that if he does play, I do want in on this matchup to a certain extent. The Bears offense, it's kind of looking really good. Like, this is the best offense we've ever seen the Bears put together with, Ben Johnson, and he has been really good with the run game lately coming out of their bye week. So I do think Swift was the lead back. I was wrong about him and Kyle Monangai last week, so I'm not making that mistake again. I think if Swift plays, he'll still be the focal point, but I do still think there will be a split to a degree, but not enough to keep Swift outside the top 20. Travis Etienne at 20 and Woody Marks at 21. So with Travis Etienne versus the Los Angeles Chargers, I actually also see this very similar to the way I see Kamani Vidal. I think there's a chance this one could be a really good play, but I also see where he could get shut down. Travis Etienne not really hitting ceiling games anymore that are upwards of 20 points. What we've been getting a lot of is anywhere between 6 points to like 15 points. This past game he played, that was his best week in a long time. Travis Etienne has done that in recent years. He usually wears down as the season goes, and we're at that point. So I do worry about them. The defense is hot in Los Angeles right now, so I could see a world where Travis Etienne doesn't have the best game, but I've got him still inside the top 20 because he's handling the majority of the workload. Woody Marks at 21 at Tennessee. It just Like, this matchup is so easy that I can't see this one not working to an extent. And if you want to know something, they're giving Woody Marks basically a trial run to be their running back one. I mean, Nick Chubb was barely in the game last week for them. Maybe it's because they were trying to build a comeback and Woody Marks is the better pass-catching back, but all I know is what I saw last week and what I've seen over the last several weeks, which is Chubb is just not effective. So I do kind of feel like they're starting to lean more towards Woody Marks. Maybe I'm wrong and we get crapped on this week, but I think Woody Marks is actually a really good play against a team they should absolutely dominate. And then we've got RJ Harvey at 22 to round out this tier versus Kansas City. Now I want to get the part out of the way here that I've been harping on all week. With or without J.K. Dobbins, which we'll get into here in a minute, I don't like this matchup. Kansas City off a bye week with Andy Reid, historically dominant. This is not a matchup I want to pursue. But we've got no other choice because J.K. Dobbins is a candidate for the IR as of the time of this filming, and I have a feeling he's going to end up there. When I hear he's getting multiple opinions on an injury, I'm out. That's what happened with Bucky Irving. That's what happened with Terry McLaurin, and look at where those two guys have ended up this year. That's what we heard with J.K. Dobbins' injury from Thursday Night Football. So I am very, very much in on R.J. Harvey moving forward. This is not the best game for him, but make sure he is on your radar right now because he's about to have some big games. Dropping down to our next tier, Kyle Monangai is at 23, and Rachaad White's at 24. So Kyle Monangai, yes, I would rather play him over Rachaad White, but he's in the same tier. So if you disagree, whatever, have at it. I think Kyle Monangai is the better play, though. At Minnesota, I think it's going to be similar to the Ravens, where the Vikings defense probably holds on for a while. But at some point, Chicago's offense will just be too much for them to hold because the Vikings won't be able to score points. So I do think there will come a point where they're going to have to run more and, they're just going to run out the clock. And if Swift is injured, this is definitely one of those games where I could see him taking over. So it just kind of depends on Swift's injury and what his health is looking like. If he doesn't play, he's going to shoot up these rankings. But for now, with Swift logged in there as a playable option this week, Kyle Monangai is going to stick at 23. And then Rachaad White at 24 at Buffalo this week. The matchup is, again, potentially one he could take advantage of, but I'm done with ranking him higher than he should be. And same thing with Courtland Sutton for the wide receiver group. They're very much in the same category. Yes, in theory, running back one in Tampa, but Sean Tucker starting to get more involved because he's just been better. I mean, this is what we've seen throughout Rachaad White's career. Just not a very efficient back. So I do think there's a lot of issues with playing Rachaad White. But on the other hand, I could see a world where this one works because he does get receiving upside. And in this game, if it's going to be that bad of weather as we're expecting, yes, there's a lot of opportunity there for Rachaad White this week. So I've got to still have him in the top 25. Amari DiMercato is at 25, and Kareem Hunt is at 26 to round out this tier. DiMercato, the way I look at it is, Bam Knight was the lead back last week in touches, but he was much better, and now Bam Knight is hurt. Amari DiMercato, another week without Trey Benson, it's looking like. I do think in this matchup versus San Francisco, very opportunistic play that you should not rule out. If you are in a decision between him and Aaron Jones, I'm going with DiMercato. I think he could be a really good play this week and one that could get you 20 points. High ceiling, low floor on this guy right here. San Francisco's defense, though, is one I want to take advantage of. And Kareem Hunt at Denver, the matchup couldn't be much tougher. I do not like this matchup, but I do like the fact that the last time we saw this play out without Isaiah Pacheco, Kareem Hunt was by far and away their running back one. It was not close. And last time I did the rankings with them, I had Brashard Smith over Kareem Hunt. I am not making that mistake again. I can tell you that right now. So yes, I will definitely play Kareem Hunt over Brashard Smith and over a lot of other guys because the fact remains this still is a dominant red zone back, and that's where he's made his money this year in fantasy. Dropping down to our last tier, Aaron Jones is at 27 and Kenneth Walker is at 28. Aaron Jones versus Chicago. I mean, listen, his upside is around 15 to 16 points, which is okay, but his floor is really low. I mean, we just kind of know that Minnesota is at this point where they've seen enough with Jordan Mason, and I want to make it clear, I said to not drop him weeks ago. I think it's okay to drop him. Like, Aaron Jones is clearly the lead back, but the problem is, of course, We don't know what his injury situation is like, and there are still plays where Jordan Mason comes in relief. So Aaron Jones, still not a full-time player, very much a part-time player, but one that clearly is the best back in Minnesota. Kenneth Walker at 28, I mean, he's right here with Zach Charbonnet, and it's getting kind of depressing because this past week should have been a game where Kenneth could have dominated, but they took him out not for Charbonnet, but for somebody else on the backfield that hasn't done jack squat the rest of the year for them outside of one game. I don't know what to say. Kenneth, I still slightly prefer over Charbonnet only because the big play upside is there. But Charbonnet is clearly right there with him as far as carries go on a weekly basis, and he's the red zone back. So you cannot have him much lower than Kenneth Walker is. But just for me personally, I still prefer Kenneth Walker. But I'm telling you this, my patience is running short, and Zach Charbonnet could very easily be ranked above Kenneth Walker very, very soon for me personally. And Sean Tucker is at 30 to round us out. So here's the mentality on this one. This is a philosophical thing because other situations behind him are a lot of split backfields as well, like Chris Rodriguez, Bill Krosky, David Montgomery, Tyjae Spears, Tyrone Tracy. That's a lot of split backfields there. So give me the offense that has the most upside and the guy who looks like he actually could take over. To me, Sean Tucker looks like he could take over. Like, that's the way I process the information. Because if you watch him play and watch Rachaad White play in a vacuum, Tucker's the better player, and it's just a more explosive runner. So yeah, at this point, I do view Sean Tucker as a guy that absolutely can be played as a top 30 running back option this week. So let me know what you think of the rankings in the comments below, and if you want to see the top 30 wide receivers for this week, click on this video right here.